I was with a good friend of mine a few years ago in our local coffee shop, and I said something to her that I wasn't planning on saying. In fact, I had never had the thoughts before, and I was appalled by the words that I said, and yet I could feel the truth of them. Because what came out of my mouth was this: the greatest or worst damning influence on women in our country is Christianity. There has been nothing worse in the history of the U.S. on women than my religion. Wow. Now, I realize my religion has done terrible things in the thousands of years that it's been around, but this is the one that still happens in my lifetime, and I hate it. And so if we're going to talk about what women should and shouldn't be able to do, and we should talk about women and men and the headship of men and all that, well, as we talk about that, I'm not really going to bring up women in church and women in ministry that much, and can they talk, can they not talk, all those things, because I think that's the lesser issue. The greater issue is this concept of the man is the head of the woman. And if we figure that out, I think all the rest kind of takes care of itself. And if we're going to look at this issue, we have to look at the big picture. Because so often what people do is they look at the one verse here and the one verse there, and they go, oh, there it is, and they miss the entire big picture. But there are a couple of things we have to look at in the big picture, because the big picture sets the tone for everything in the little pictures. And the first place we need to go to see the big picture is the very beginning. And John Eldredge is the first person who brought this to my attention, that if you really want to see what God intended for mankind, you have to look at the very beginning. The first couple chapters in the book of Genesis are just so insightful into what was God's plan for us. And if you go there, you find this crazy thing, because you see the first time. And when the Bible mentions something for the first time, that's really key. That sets the tone for all the other times, right? Well, it's the first time where men over women is listed. And you have to get this. The first time where it says the man will rule over the woman is a curse. And it's not even a curse. This is like the curse. This is when Adam and Eve blow it and these curses come down upon them. Now all of life is different. If we just understood that, wouldn't that change our concept of this verse here and this little verse here? If we saw in the big scheme of things, man over woman is a curse. And if you look further at those curses, this is crazy to me. Because if you look at the curse on the man, what you see is when the man was cursed, the earth was cursed. They were together. And that's because the man, do you remember? You remember the story? The man was made out of the earth. God took some earth, put it together, breathed into it, and out came a man. So Adam is like walking dirt with the life of God in him. And so you curse Adam, and we find out the earth is cursed. Okay, if you understand that concept, now we go into the curse on the woman. And so I asked the question, what was the woman made out of? Well, she wasn't made out of the earth. God actually took a piece of the man and fashioned it into the woman. And so when you have the woman here and she is cursed, she is made out of the man. And so when the woman is cursed, the man is cursed also. Do you realize? I have never, ever heard anybody say this in my life. When women were cursed, men were cursed. I have seen so many times where we talk about the headship of man, and the man is a spiritual leader, and the man is the leader of the house, and we men puff our chests out and we're like, oh, aren't I great? And we don't even understand that we were cursed. Me being the head is not God's plan. That is a curse. That is something that I want to fight against. Come on, if there's a curse, I want to break it, right? And so we don't promote that. We're not proud of that. We are actually trying to get rid of it. That is a burden I was never meant to carry. We were meant to fill the earth, conquer the earth, and rule the earth together, because there is no talk whatsoever in the Bible of who's the head until they have blown it and there are curses. I remember talking to this young man, and he was young and pretty young in marriage also, just in his first year or two of marriage. And we started talking about this, and God started highlighting some of these things. And I remember the day when it was like the lights came on. And when he walked out of that restaurant, it was like he was 100 pounds lighter, because he realized he was taking his burden upon himself. There was all this pressure. I have to lead the family, and I have to be the spiritual leader. And suddenly he was like, no, what is marriage? It's partnership. And where my wife is stronger than me, man, I will follow her. And where I'm stronger than she is, she'll follow me, and we'll do this together. Oh, that's just such an amazing concept. If you understand, the men over women is a curse upon both the men and the women. And so what do we do about these New Testament verses? Well, we get the big picture first. And the big picture is, it's a curse. The second thing I want to say about that in the big picture, if we're ever going to understand why Paul said things like, I don't let a woman speak, things like that, whoa, how do you deal with that? You got to have the big picture first. And the second part of the big picture is that Jesus came, and we are told clearly that he came to break the curse. And somehow we turn this into this spiritual thing about getting rid of sin and stuff like that. That's amazing. But if he came to break the curse, come on, there is the curse. If you talk about the curse, you're surely talking about the stuff at the beginning of the book of Genesis, right? And so if Jesus came to break the curse, then surely he came to break men over women. And if Jesus came to do that, and it says specifically that he came to do that, then I don't want to be talking about the headship of man, because then I'm promoting the curse. I want to do everything in my power to break it. So that's the big picture. It's a curse. Jesus came to break it. So now all of a sudden, we have these verses that say things like, women, submit to your husbands. Well, what do we do about those things? They sound crazy. They sound out of place. Well, they are. And let me tell you a story, and then I'll give you a couple of biblical principles. So I was at a water park with my daughter a while ago, and she had her friend, and we were in the wave pool, and I got tired of being smashed by the waves and smashed by the people who were being smashed by the waves. So I got out, and I just began to observe people. And as I did this, I saw a woman who was wearing a bathing suit that I had never seen before. And it wasn't like the tiniest bikini ever or something, which you see in the Dells. No, it was one that was almost like a scuba suit. And all you could see were the woman's feet, and then just this round circle, little round circle of her face. And I was guessing she was a Muslim woman, and this was the proper way for her to swim. And when I saw that, I was struck by this thought that I knew was from God. And I don't say that so that you believe it. I say it because that's my interpretation of it. And the story illustrates biblical principles. Because when I saw her, God suddenly gave me this thought. I cannot tell people who think like that what I really think of women. And he wasn't talking about Muslim people being bad. He was talking about people who think that way about women. You got to cover up. I don't even know if I'll let you go out. You have to submit to me. All of that. He cannot come and immediately say his final thoughts on women. So it's like Jesus came and he broke the curse on women, but he couldn't tell everybody that because the world wasn't ready for it. And so he started saying things that they were ready for. So there's one of the biblical principles and one of the biblical stories, whatever you want to call it, that I say all the time when Jesus said, I have many more things to say to you, but you cannot handle them now. I came to break the curse on women. You can't hear it, so I will tell you what you can hear. So when Paul says things like, women, submit to your husbands, he adds to it things like, husbands, love your wives. So it's not God's final plan of what he really thinks of women, but it's better than you just need to serve me. You know, you took a step forward, but the people can't handle hearing it. So all we can get right now is a step forward. And God says, for now, I'll take that. And we have to understand that. Those verses were a step forward for the women. They were a step forward in people's thinking. So it's like even when we read about women and the covering on their head, well, Paul says, yep, that used to be the symbol maybe of hiding you not showing your glory, things like that. Well, now I'm going to say that's a symbol of your authority. It's not what God really wants, that women have to stay covered, but it takes them a step forward that says, oh, now I got to do the same thing, but now it's a step forward into me doing more. But the problem is we haven't listened since. We haven't grown and listened to what God said since then. And here's one of the things that I find so appalling about all of this. And that's the fact where if we just look at Ephesians 5, and I can't remember if it's Colossians 3 or 4, they have these things that scholars call household codes. And so that's the places where we read, wives, submit to your husbands. But it's also like, what should children do? What should slaves do? All of that. And this is what you got to get. Because the end of each of those lists is that slaves should obey their masters. Now, what is eerily similar is the beginning and the end of each list. Wives, obey or submit to your husbands, and slaves, submit to your masters. Because really, women under men is a type of slavery. It's not freedom, which is another big theme of the Bible. But here's the appalling, crazy thing. I don't know of a single Christian, the same list, that says, what should you do? Women, submit to your husbands. That is preached everywhere. I don't know a single place anywhere in the United States where it says slaves, submit to your masters. You know why? Because we've grown to the place where we realize God hates slavery. That's what happened. In the Bible, it says that slaves should submit to their masters. But it was a step forward at the time because he also told the masters, well, treat them fairly. Okay? So that was a step forward. It wasn't his final word. So what has happened in the thousands of years since is we have come to the place where we realize that God doesn't want slavery. God doesn't like slavery. So we've eradicated those verses from our Bible that are at the end of the list, but the ones that are at the beginning about women that are also about slavery, we have kept them and promoted them and locked women under a curse and men under a curse. Absolutely crazy. Those verses that we see here and there are not God's final word about women. They were what people could hear at the time. The big picture shows us. Big picture shows us men over women is a curse, and Jesus doesn't like the curse. Let me end with this. There are two things that I think, more than anything else, holds Christianity back from ever rising up and becoming great again. And the first one is we lost the apostles. Somewhere along the line, we have to regain the men and women who can demonstrate God, raise the dead, heal the sick, you name it, and people go, that is God. If we don't have that, we'll never be great again. The second thing that prevents our greatness, that keeps us locked up, is our view of women. Women are amazing. Women are the co-rulers of men. And we will never rise up, we will never experience God's full blessing until we put women back in their rightful place.